I'm going to jump over to our guest here. We'll get back to this conversation after, but we've got a bit of a 25 minute chat with Luca Dellanna, who is the first person on Earth, a pioneer, the equivalent of Neil Armstrong, but for publishing a book as a roam graph. So rather than a traditional book on Amazon, which I know he's selling it on Amazon, but he's released his book as a roam graph. So Luca, are you here?
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me here.
Luca, can we give him a wave, or we need, Zoom has to improve this function, but yeah, just a big wave to say hello. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for taking the risk to be pioneering and try something new. So do you mind just quickly describing what you've done with your book?
Yes, so I always liked the idea of being able to do something more with traditional books, rather than just providing some information and then telling the reader even how the information has to be consumed, the order, and then basically limiting the reader. Instead, I always wanted to do something more than that. And a few years ago, I remember myself, I was even trying to code some system with React to display some modular text and so on, but then I abandoned it because that's not my core thing. And then very recently I discovered Roam. And immediately after using it, I saw the potential, in addition of the potential for writing a book, also for consuming it. So from the reader's point of view. And so I decided to publish my book as a Roam book so that the reader could do more with it. So on one side, the reader is more engaged because he can decide basically the path. He can skip some arguments, he can dig deeper in other arguments, he can take notes, and all of these things, they keep the reader engaged. And then the second thing is that the reader can actually build on it. He can make connections. He can either read the book as a standalone graph, so he takes notes there, or he can import the book in his own graph, and then automatically whatever notes he makes, they become connection with his own notes. He can, maybe tomorrow, like he goes to a meeting and he discovers something that is related to it, and while he takes notes for the meeting, he can just link to a concept from the book or embed it. And yeah, there are endless possibilities. So the idea really was, instead of giving some knowledge, I actually give building blocks that the reader can then use in his life.
Excellent. Yeah. So I can see the appeal for both. A lot of different contexts. A book as building blocks is very nice as a description. Do you mind showing us your book?
Yes.
Screen sharing, so we can get a bit of a sense of what it is.
Yes, I will.
What it looks like, particularly comparing to our own graph.
Yeah. Can you see it?
Yes, I can now.
Okay. So here, for example, is a random chapter, and you can see that here there are some concepts are linked, and or they are embedded or referenced. And here again and again, and then at the bottom you can see which chapter reference. So instead of building the book just like as Wikipedia, let's say where I write some pages each for a concept, it's actually written with a table of contents. So there is a suggested reading for the chapters. So the chapters are numbered. And you can see that the link from each other. Here is the link to the previous chapter. And at the bottom, you have the link to the next chapter. But at any point, the reader can also just stray away and read about the concepts. So for example, here you can see this page, this chapter, is basically the same one that you get if you have the ebook, the normal ebook. But then here there is this page called the lowest large numbers, which is not in the ebook. And it's more like a reference. It's like a summary of what's this concept, the places where it appears in the book, how it's used, additional examples, and so on and so forth. Then talking about examples, okay, here you have the table of contents. And then at the end, you also have some tables. For example, you have the tables of all the examples. And these are just like, I use the mention block. And the examples, for example, are all tagged. So every time that in the book you read, for example, here, in the book there is an example on sports. So I tag it as example sport, so that then people can just read all the example on sports. And it's great also to know like how, for example, the book is on this concept of ergodicity, and you want to know, for example, you want to explain it to a friend, or maybe you're interested in sports, and so you can immediately filter on the relevant examples. And this is also used in a page, because if you're in a page with multiple examples, then you can use the filters here, and you can only select the examples which are relevant for you, which are great, for example, if you're reading my book on ergodicity, for example, and there are a lot of examples on different venues of life. And then tomorrow you go back to work, and at work they only care about, for example, investing. And then you can just filter and see everything from the book which relates to investing, and you already have a very nice trace from which you can explain to your friends, to your colleagues. This is another thing that you can do, for example.
So it's amazing. It really feels as though it opens up a lot of possibilities to make the text alive, as you say, to offer a book as a bunch of blocks for people to explore and use and recombine, and to learn in different ways, as opposed to just a static text. Can you talk quickly about the process of writing it? Did you use Roam to write it, or and more generally about some of the decisions you've had to make about formatting, like using tags or attributes or different aliases even? Was that a hard process to kind of format the book in Roam?
Well, actually it wasn't that hard, because the Roam is working very well for that. And it's actually much easier, because you begin from one point, and then it just like kind of aggregates, and then it becomes very easier, because once you have one concept which is linked with another, then you can very easily see where things are missing, what you can reference to what else, and so on. So paradoxically, it also helps during editing, because when I'm editing a book in Word, for example, then it's very hard to keep coherence. And if there is a concept which is explained on page 50 and on page 150, I need to jump, and that's very dispersive. Here instead, if I want to check between one concept and the next one, I can just open it in the sidebar, and editing with a sidebar, it's extremely more efficient. You can reference your notes. You can, so actually the process of writing was much easier. I had to lose a bit of time on the theme, because I wanted to use a theme which makes it look a bit more like a book, as a personal choice. And I had to spend a bit of time on that. It was non-evident, even if like I code my own website, so I know CSS and so on, but it took a bit. But otherwise, writing the content and link it with each other, it was actually quite easy. And yeah.
Excellent. I can see, sorry, I've got a few screens here, so apologies. I can see Chris Oakley's got his hand up. I'm not sure if you're keen to ask a question, Chris, is that right?
Yeah, just so I have purchased the book, but I haven't got a chance to read it yet. It just came out. But I noticed you sell it as a standalone book, plus there's an add-on for the Roam. What percentage is the breakdown, people buying just the book versus with the Roam add-on?
It's difficult to answer this question because I still do not have the numbers from Amazon.
Okay.
Because from the people that buy it on Gumroad, which is the online marketplace where I also sell the ROM version, I will say that about 50% of the people also bought the ROM version.
Okay.
So content-based, so the ROM version contains everything that the ebook version contains, plus additional content. Additional examples, a bit of additional examples, more reference, summary pages, bridge concepts, and so on and so forth.
Okay. But for the people that buy it on Amazon and maybe later they kind of learn about this, is there a way that you communicate that through Amazon that this extra piece exists?
Yes and no. Yes, meaning that today the book launched on Amazon. And so I went on and I could finally upload a second version of the book in which I reference, I can begin referencing that there is also a ROM version. I couldn't do it before because Amazon doesn't, so it's a bit of a lengthy process to publish on Amazon. And when I begin publishing on Amazon, I still didn't finish the ROM version. So polished. But yeah, the problem is that if people buy it on Gumroad, they can like purchase the upgrade and they don't have to pay extra. They just pay the difference as if they purchased it the first time without. So it's much more intuitive. On Amazon, unfortunately, I have no way to track who buys my book on Amazon. So it's much more difficult for me to offer like simple upgrades. I'm still trying to figure out for the future if there is any way to do it, like verify purchases. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
I can see a few people with their hand up. I'm going to go to one, and then we'll go to Matt Brockwell, I think, too. So who's asked in the chat. So I might just go to one first, and then and we've only got a few left, Lucas. So I appreciate it's getting late too. So one, over to you.
Thanks, Matt. Luca, I was wondering if you write the book in Rome in this kind of nonlinear style, how do you keep track of it to then export in a linear way, like to publish the linear version on Amazon?
So usually what I do, my writing process is first I use ROM to collect notes, to write scattered, so like I have different pages for different concepts, and then in each page I write about it and so on and so forth. Then what I do is that I use paper to write an outline. Then I talk the outline to a few people, to a few early readers. They verify like the structure of the outline, if it makes sense, if it's understandable, and so on and so forth. And then once I have the outline, it's much easier because then I basically go back to I create the table of content first. I create the pages here, usually in a new graph. And then I open the page, and then I go see what's the relevant content, and I can paste it, or I can connect it, and so on and so forth. The thing is that like there are two different processes, whether you're writing a book that it's for a ROM book only, or whether you want to write a book that it's also be published as ebook. Because if you do the second, you need to have a very clear outline. So at some point you have to say, okay, I collected the notes, I write the outline, and then back from the outline to writing the content. Whereas instead, if you write a ROM-only book, it's much easier to like proceed in a more distributed way and write the concepts as they come, and then just let the reader roam through.
Excellent. Thanks, Luca. We got Matt. I might pass over to you. I've asked Matt to just summarize some of the ones from the chat, which I can't follow along at the same time. Sorry about that. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, I want to bring up something that came up in the chat. Christina Walter asked, in a traditional book, the linearity gives us one really nice thing, which is we can put a bookmark in it and realize exactly how much we've read and how much we have left to go. I'm curious, in your perspective, what kind of tools for a non-linear book do you think might help a reader to know how much of it how far they've read through it and what they've explored and what they haven't? Do you have any thoughts on a system that would help us as readers of books where we can choose our own path?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think that a good compromise would be to have a table of contents so that even if you are not reading it in the order, you can still mark the concept as read or unread, or you can just like check the table of contents and you know where you have still to jump. So I would really suggest, even if the book has not been written as a linear book, still to have a table of contents in one page that people can reference and have kind of an idea of what are still the unexplored parts.
Excellent. You've given me a lot of ideas. We don't have a table. We've got Sonka's book in the graph at the moment. He was generous enough to allow us to export it and put the full book in our book club graph. And the focus for us is to actually try and block reference from different blocks in the graph to generate some discussion at the block level. But the idea of a table of contents seems very important and seems obvious in retrospect after I've seen yours, that you really need it to help to generate some kind of like structure. But certainly, yeah, I think that's important. So we might add that as well. Excellent. Nico, I can see you got your hand up. We might make this the final one and then we'll let Luca go.
I'm not sure whether I might have missed something last week, but in terms of reading the book, and I noted this in the chat, the way I tend to read ebooks is to highlight things on pretty much every page. And that way, obviously that has a function in itself, but it also lets me see the progress that I've made and what I haven't read in the book. And one of the challenges I've had reading our Rome version of Sonka's book is that because the text is shared, we can't edit that text itself. And I've been copying block references and then creating a text and alias to that so I can mark that up myself, which I think other people have been doing too. But I'm wondering if the model that we're thinking about, or might be the appropriate model, would be to essentially copy all the block references to the whole book into our own page and then switch that to text and alias so that we can mark up everything as we go along without affecting the main text. I don't know whether I'm jumping ahead too much here, but I'm just trying to sort of...
Yeah, that's a good question, Nico. And I think you're kind of getting to some of our issues and the things that we need to explore in terms of how to really navigate a collective exploration of a book at a block level, what type of conventions we set in terms of how to do that. I think my impression of that is to use block references onto your own page as you read it, and then nest your comments underneath, so we get a running chapter commentary of on the block level. But I guess that's something we're going to explore. Look, people can't actually collectively comment on blocks on your book at the moment, can they? It's more like they export it to their own individual graph and they've got a copy in their own graph. Is that right?
Yes. So right now the book is distributed in two ways. So you both get the JSON file that you can import into your own graph, and you get access to the private read-only version that is the one that I'm showing you. I do not know exactly if and how readers can comment on that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, if they can, I cannot see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So they need to have a shared graph. But you know, in the future, I assume be able to cross-account transclusion, where you'll be able to use a block across multiple accounts, which will be really cool as well.
Wonderful.
Feels like it's on the radar. Excellent. Luca, I appreciate it's very late and you've been very generous with your time, and very exciting to see the stuff that you're doing. So I'm going to send out a link. Actually, I sent out a link to your book in the email this week. So for anyone that likes to look it up, there's a direct link to it on Gumroad. And more generally, we're going to be exploring some of the same ideas as well.
Thank you. And thank you, Matthew, for inviting me. And thank you, everyone. And if I can just add one more thing, I'm working on a new ROM native project. So right now I've been exploring books as a medium. And the next week I will launch this new project that uses ROM to explore a different kind of medium and format. So if you want to learn more, there is I created this website, which is rom-books.com. And there is also a newsletter there. And next week, I will talk about this new format based on ROM, which is not books. And I'm really just very excited.
Excellent. I've just looked it up, and I've put the link in the chat here so people can have a look. So very cool. Very cool. Yeah, Rome books are just at the beginning. I agree. Look, you're onto something here, and I'm really exploring it. So thanks very much for coming in. Appreciate
Thank you, everyone.
Feedback. Thank you. And yeah, keen to show you what we do over the weeks ahead as well. So I'll check in back later.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, thanks, Luca.
Thank you.